You're more than welcome. Let me just say a quick word about this. You know, Senator Obama and I have differences. We do. We have a difference about health care, which he and I have talked about before. We have a fundamental difference about the way you bring about change. But both of us are powerful voices for change. And I might add, we finished first and second in the Iowa caucus, I think in part as a result of that. Now, what I would say is this. Anytime you speak out powerfully for change, the forces of status quo attack. That's exactly what happens. It's fine to have a disagreement about health care. To say that Senator Obama is having a debate with himself from some Associated Press story, I think is just not, that's not the kind of discussion we should be having. I think that every time this happens, what will occur every time he speaks out for change, every time I fight for change, the forces of status quo are going to attack every single time. And what we have to remember, and this is the overarching issue here, because what we really need in New Hampshire and in future state primaries is we need an unfiltered debate between the agents of change about how we bring about that change, because we have differences about that. But the one thing I do not argue with him about is he believes deeply in change, and I believe deeply in change. And any time you're fighting for that, I mean, I didn't hear these kind of attacks from Senator Clinton when she was ahead. Now that she's not, we hear them. And any time you speak out for change, this is what happens.
Well, making change, wait a minute now, wait a minute. I'm going to respond to this because obviously making change is not about what you believe. It's not about a speech you make. It is about working hard. There are 7,000 kids in New Hampshire who have health care because I helped to create the Children's Health Insurance Program. There are 2,700 National Guard and Reserve members who have access to health care because on a bipartisan basis, I pushed legislation through over the objection of the Pentagon, over the threat of a veto from President Bush. I want to make change, but I've already made change. I will continue to make change. I'm not just running on a promise of change. I'm running on 35 years of change. I'm running on having taken on the drug companies and the health insurance companies, taking on the oil companies. So, you know, I think it is clear that what we need is somebody who can deliver change. And we don't need to be raising the false hopes of our country about what can be delivered. The best way to know I will produce is to look at the changes that I've already made.
Can I respond briefly to that?
I'll let you respond. In all fairness to Governor Jefferson.
Okay.
Well, I've been in hostage negotiations that are a lot more civil than this. And, I think one of the things that we need to remember, I'm going to say this again because I said it in a previous debate, let's stay positive. You know, there'll be plenty of time to get negative with the Republicans. You heard them earlier. Let us talk about how we're going to make sure that we deliver health care for the American people, how we change America's foreign policy, how we make schools better and pay teachers better and get rid of No Child Left Behind. Look, what we need is change. There's no question. But, you know, whatever happened to experience? Is experience kind of a leper? What is wrong with, you know, what is wrong with having like myself, 14 years in the Congress, 2 cabinet positions? I mean, I've gone head-to-head with the North Koreans. We got the remains of soldiers back. We persuaded them to reduce their nuclear weapons. What is wrong with being a governor and going to a state and giving health care to kids under 12 and creating jobs and balancing budgets? What is wrong with being a Secretary of Energy who has made America or tried to make America a land of clean energy, or as a governor? My point is this. We want to change this country, but you have to know how to do it. And there's nothing wrong with having experience. So, you know, I love change. We all are for change. But the question is, examine the record of those that in the past have produced change. And that has taken responsibilities. We need somebody that has been tested.
I'm going to go to Senator Edwards and then Senator Obama, then we'll move on.
Thank you very much. What I would say in response to the discussion that just took place is we have to understand what's at stake. Nobody cares about hearing a bunch of politicians fight. They're not the slightest bit interested in that, and they shouldn't be interested in it. What's at stake here is a fight for the future of the middle class. And we do have different perspectives on how we fight for the middle class, how we fight for jobs, how we fight for health care. I believe, and I believe it very strongly, that there are entrenched special interests, very well financed. There's some examples are drug companies, insurance companies, oil companies, et cetera, that stand between America and the change that we need. And I think if you defend the way the system works, it's very hard to take those people on. I believe, and have fought these people, I'm 54 years old, I've been fighting these people, these irresponsible corporations. And there are good corporations in America, Charlie. I want to point that out. Good corporations, good employers. Costco, AT&T, for example, is now working to help unionize some of their and to bring jobs back. But
we'll get to the commercials later.
Let me finish this, though. I want to finish this. The point is this. I think there are differences between us about how we fight for the future of the middle class. And I believe you have to be willing to take on these entrenched special interests. And I think if you're not willing to do it, it is impossible to bring about the change that the country needs.
Final word, Senator.
And just to wrap up, part of the change that's desperately needed is to enlist the American people in the process of self-government. And one of the areas that I have constantly worked on is not only pushing aside the special interests, this past year passing the toughest ethics reform legislation since Watergate, but also making sure that the government is transparent and accountable. And that's what I think people were responding to in Iowa. We saw it here in New Hampshire today. They want somebody who's talking straight to them about the choices that are ahead, and they want to make sure that government is responding to them directly, because folks feel the American dream is slipping away. They're working harder for less. They are paying more for health care, for college, for gas at the pump, and they are having a tougher time saving and retiring. And what they don't feel is that the government is listening to them and responding to them. That's the kind of change that I think we need.
I'm going to move on to our third subject before I run out of time, and I want to turn to Iraq.
They weren't playing nice throughout the whole debate,
No,
that's for
they were
sure.
not.
Boy, did he push her buttons there. A good moment for Barack Obama there. I thought he looked a little peevish, a little small.
Or nice smile from Chelsea Clinton.
Exactly.
Out there in the audience.
There is so much fatigue on that stage. Exception was John Edwards. I think he showed passion and vitality.
When we come back after the break, we're going to check in with Facebook and see what you've been saying.